Top 10 celebrities who have tested positive for the coronavirus. The CDC guidelines put in place to curb the coronavirus pandemic have sent a ripple effect of delays and cancellations across the entertainment and sport industries. With over 16.3 million cases of the virus worldwide, celebrities and civilians alike are still hunkering down at home, even if restrictions are being eased on a state-by-state basis. As the virus continues to spread at an alarming rate, those in the public eye afflicted with the coronavirus often have access to testing through private physicians are urging fans and followers to self-isolate. Here are some celebrities who tested positive for the coronavirus. Number 1. Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson. On March 11, the internationally beloved actor shared on Twitter that he and his wife, actress and singer Rita Wilson, contracted the coronavirus in Australia. Hanks was down under to prepare for shooting Baz Luhrmann's Elvis Presley biopic when he and Wilson started to feel cold and flu symptoms. The couple subsequently tested positive for the coronavirus and assured they are isolating themselves during their recovery period. According to a March 16 report from People, after a 5-day stay at a Queensland hospital, the couple is now recuperating at a rented home in Australia. They made it back to Los Angeles on March 27 after their 2-week quarantine. Upon recovering, Hanks and Wilson announced that they volunteered to donate blood and plasma towards COVID-19 vaccine on an April 18 episode of Wait, Don't Tell Me. Number 2. Placido Domingo. The famed opera singer wrote in a March 22 Facebook message that it was his moral duty to announce he has the coronavirus. My family and I all in self-isolation for as long as it is deemed medically necessary, he explained. Currently, we are all in good health, but I experience fever and cough symptoms, therefore deciding to get tested, and the result came back positive. Domingo also begged people to follow the basic guidelines in an attempt to slow the spread of the virus. On March 29, 7 days after he announced his positive test, Domingo was hospitalized due to COVID-19, his spokesperson told CNN. He is doing well and is responding to treatment, his spokesperson said. In a statement on March 30, Domingo said he was at home and I feel fine. Number 3. Aaron Tveit. The actor, currently taking time off from Moulin Rouge as Broadway is dark, announced on March 23 on Instagram that he tested positive for COVID-19. I've been in quarantine since Broadway shows shut down on Thursday, March 12, and I'm feeling much better, Tveit wrote. I consider myself extremely lucky that my symptoms have been very mild, cold-like with no fever, as so many are experiencing much more symptoms, as this is a very dangerous virus. He shared the news alongside a photo of his dog, Miles, because he wrote, "Dogs are loving all this extra time at home with their humans." Since recovering, Tveit has performed on live streams, including the 90th birthday celebration for Stephen Sondheim. Number 4. John Prine. The folk music icon died due to the coronavirus on April 7 after previously being hospitalized, his family confirmed. He was 73. I sat with John, who was deeply sedated in the hours before he passed, and will be forever grateful for that opportunity. His wife Fiona, who had also tested positive for COVID-19 and quarantined separately, wrote on Instagram, "Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the outpouring love we have received from family, friends, and fans all over the world. John will be so missed, but he will continue to comfort us with his words and music and the gifts of kindness, humor, and love he left for all of us to share." Prine released his first album in 1971 and became beloved for his emotionally honest, often humorous lyrics. He recovered from squamous cell cancer in 1998, which affected his singing afterwards. He won a Lifetime Achievement Grammy Award this year and was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2019. Number 5. Ellis Marcellus Jr. Ellis Marcellus Jr., a celebrated New Orleans jazz pianist who raised and mentored 4 jazz musicians' sons, died on April 1st at the age of 85. Marcellus had been hospitalized earlier this week and tested for coronavirus, with son Branford confirming the cause of death was due to complications stemming from COVID-19, according to the New York Times. Marcellus rose to prominence as a jazz pianist in the 50s and 60s before becoming a music educator in the 70s. He served as a music mentor to his 4 sons, Branford, a saxophonist, Delfeo, a trombonist, Jason, a drummer, and Winton, a trumpeter and composer who currently serves as the managing and artistic director of jazz at Lincoln Center. Marcellus was inducted into Louisiana's Music Hall of Fame in 2008. Number 6. Pink. The singer discussed her coronavirus diagnosis on Instagram Friday, April 3rd, saying she had visited her doctor after she and her 3-year-old son started experiencing COVID-19 symptoms in March. After quarantining for 2 weeks, she subsequently tested negative. It is an absolute travesty and failure of our government to not make testing more widely accessible, she wrote. This illness is serious and real. People need to know that the illness affects the young and the old, healthy and unhealthy, rich and poor, and we must make testing free and more widely accessible to protect our children, our families, our friends, and our communities. Number 7. Danny Berstein. The Moulin Rouge actor and 6-time Tony nominee detailed his experience with COVID-19 in a Hollywood Reporter guest column on April 13th. Days after Broadway closed on March 12th, he felt symptoms including a fever around 101.6 degrees and days of coughing blood. He got tested along with other Moulin Rouge company members, but never received his result. Co-star Aaron Tveit announced a positive COVID-19 test on March 23rd. On March 22nd, he went to the hospital after nearly fainting, where he then tested positive for the coronavirus along with having double pneumonia. He left the hospital on March 27 and is still recovering at home. I was surrounded by death, and I knew that the longer I stayed in the unit, the greater my chances were that eventually it would be me the nurses were talking about, he wrote of the experience. Number 8. Nick Cordero. The waitress actor died from COVID-19 on July 5th after being in the hospital since early April with an initial case of pneumonia. On April 6, his wife, Amanda Klutz, announced he tested positive for COVID-19 after 2 negative tests. He was put on an ECMO machine to help breathing, she said on April 11th, and then put on a ventilator and kidney dialysis as well. That same day, he went into emergency surgery after the ECMO stopped blood flow to his right leg. On April 18th, Klutz shared on her Instagram story that Cordero would need to have his right leg amputated due to the blood clotting. Days after that procedure, Cordero went into septic shock and developed a fever, which then became controlled, Klutz said, on April 28th and delayed plans to remove him from his ventilator. Cordero showed early signs of waking up from his coma on May 6th. His wife said, adding on May 11th, that he had become able to understand commands. On May 13th, Cordero woke from his coma, although Klutz added that doctors were still trying to fight an infection in his lungs. A week later, on May 20, Klutz said on her Instagram story that things aren't going downhill at the moment with Cordero, although she did not specify about his condition. Klutz told CBS This Morning on July 2nd that Cordero would have needed a double lung transplant to survive. Number 9. D.L. Hughley. The comedian shared in a video on Twitter that he had tested positive for COVID-19 following his collapse during a stand-up set at Nashville's Zanny's Comedy Club. After initially being treated for dehydration and extreme exhaustion, Hughley eventually tested positive for COVID-19 despite being asymptomatic. They ran a battery of tests and I also tested positive for COVID-19, which blew me away, Hughley said in the video. I was what they call asymptomatic. I didn't have any symptoms, the classic symptoms I didn't have. Flu-like symptoms I didn't have. Shortness of breath, difficulty breathing I didn't have. A cough, a lower grade fever, I still don't have a fever. I didn't have a loss of smell or taste. Apparently, I just lost consciousness. So, in addition to all the other stuff you have to look out for, if your ass passes out in the middle of a show on stage, you probably need to get tested. And finally, number 10. 31 MLB players. Ahead of the 2020 baseball season, 31 MLB players have tested positive for the coronavirus, according to ESPN and People. The league confirmed 31 players had tested positive, but that only teams could reveal which players. The list includes Atlanta Braves first baseman Freddie Freeman, reliever Will Smith, right-hander Touki Toussaint, and infielder Pete Kozma, Minnesota Twins third baseman Miguel Sano, catcher Williams Astudillo, shortstop Nick Gordon, and right-handed reliever Edward Colonna, New York Yankees infielder DJ LeMahieu, and reliever Luis Cessa, Boston Red Sox pitchers Josh Taylor and Darwinson Hernandez, San Luis Cardinal pitchers Ricardo Sanchez and Genesis Cabrera, Kansas City Royals catcher Salvador Perez, Cleveland Indian outfielder Delino DeShields, and San Diego Padres outfielder Tommy Pham. Additional positive tests include 4 unnamed Miami Marlins players and a number of unnamed Philadelphia Phillies players.